Well, good morning, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. If I can get a thumbs up, then I'll get this mirrored effect going off the screen. All right, super. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll go ahead and hop in. And this event is being recorded, of course, and will be shared on YouTube and such later. So if you missed the first couple of minutes, don't feel too bad. We're very excited to have you here today for our Q2 Alliance e-meeting. And you'll bear with us today if we have any kind of issues with Web and ArcGeek here. It's the first time using it, but we're pretty keen on the platform. And we've got a number of folks that are going to be presenting today. The first thing that we'll start off with is some bad news and some good news. And the good news really is great news, is we've got a super bunch of stuff to share with you today. The bad news is that Tobias Schimmer, our CEO, is out sick. Kind of sounded like he was at the beach, not sure, but he says he's sick. Well, actually, I know he's sick. So he's unfortunately not able to join us today, but he's left you in my semi-competent hands. And we're going to talk to you today about a whole horde of things. So the agenda, we're going to talk a little bit, just kind of a welcome, give everybody a chance to get settled in, get a cup of coffee. We're going to talk about version 15. We're going to give kind of some operational updates on things that are going on around FileWave that are good to know about going forward. Josh is going to give an update on pro services and some training related stuff. And then as always, we're going to do an Ask FileWave Anything here at the end. I'm realizing now that this camera angle is really unfortunate with my whole double chin here thing on, so I have to apologize for that too. But we're super excited that you're here today, and we're actually really glad to be able to talk about the things that we have to talk about today, because we're pretty darn happy with where things are right now and where things are going with FileWave. So start with, we've had this slide, we've shown this slide before about kind of our vision statement for FileWave and what we see ourselves as doing. And I'm not going to read this, but I do want two things to be understood by everyone. That's either a prospective customer or an actual customer of ours now. There's two things that we super care about. One is that our product makes you efficient. That's the whole point of our product. We want you to be efficient. We don't want you to ever question the value of what you spend on FileWave. We want that to be a no-brainer for you. That, hey, I'm getting great value from this thing. That's what we want. Is, I've got a great tool and I'm spending a fair amount for it. That's what we want. And the second thing, and I think something that's really just endemic to FileWave, is we so much care about your success. We're not successful without you being successful, and your success, of course, is with your customers. So, we're always here to help you. Customer success is kind of in our DNA. It's how we think about everyone that works with us. So we're so happy to have those of you who are new with us this time. If this is your first e-Alliance meeting, we're so glad. Thank you so much for coming. And we're thrilled to have you as customers. And we look forward to making you successful. And if you don't think you're being successful, please let us know. And we'll get it sorted and get things straightened away. So with that, I'm just going to kind of jump right into some product related news. So we're going to talk a little bit about where we are now, where we're going in the short term for future, and where we're going after that. And I'm just thrilled to be able to announce that we're going to be releasing FileWave 15. FileWave 15 should release, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. We should be releasing to early adopters here this coming week. It's in the final throes with our QA team currently. So we'll go to early adopters next week, and likely general availability release the week after. So that would be the very last week in May is our expectation. So we'll follow up with that, and there's going to be a whole bunch of material you're going to be getting on this, because I've put a few things on this 5.30 but there's so much within this release that we couldn't possibly cover it all. But some I want to touch on are, first of all, just why we're calling it FileWave 15. Mainly two reasons. And it has to do with FileWave Anywhere, right? If you remember, FileWave Anywhere is what we're calling our web admin, and it is complete. It's been a long journey for us to get it to this point, but we're sticking a pin in it and saying, hey, it's done. Now, that doesn't mean we won't continue to do work on it in the future. We will, But we're saying, as far as a major initiative to release a product that's a great companion tool for those of the folks that maintain FileWave on a daily basis and kind of live in it, it is a great companion tool. It does lots of extra little things that the FileWave Central tool doesn't. It's a nice complement for that, but especially for the technicians, the engineers that are in the field on a day-to-day basis, we think that the solution is going to be great for you. And why can we say that it's complete? Well, we can say it's complete because of the second thing. And the second thing on this list is that deployments are now fully within FileWave Central. So we're going to kind of break out of the slides here. I'm going to leave them up on screen, but I'm going to show product as well here. So let me just kind of shrink this guy down a little bit, and we'll see if we can't show product here. So let me minimize this as well, right? And let's talk about FileWave Anywhere version 15, why it's such a big deal and where we are. So this is version 15 of FileWave here. We're looking at in the FileWave Anywhere. What makes it now that it's done, right? Well, the main thing here has to do with deployments. And what is so important about deployments is that within the FileWave native FileWave Central tool, you now see that we have deployments in here. And of course, we had them in 14.10. We added them, but they were read-only. You couldn't make changes, and you couldn't create new. But now within FileWave 15, you can create new deployments in here. And it's very similar to what you see in FileWave Anywhere, where you've got targets, offsets, and options. And just so you know, there have been some concerns about the way that we use the term payloads within FileWave Anywhere. We will eventually be switching that back to file sets because folks found it a little bit confusing. So we're going to stick with file sets. That seems to be a general consensus, but it's the same thing. So we can add targets here. So we can, for instance, add a group, right? So we can pick a group here and assign content to that and pick file sets. And assign those as well. So we can say, hey, everything Windows, for instance. That's a whole lot of stuff that we can send out to these devices. And then we send options, just like we do with anything else with an association, set it to Kiosk, etc. And when we do that, and when we save it, I didn't give it a name, so it's just called new deployment. But then when we're looking in the web admin here, we'll see that new deployment is here as well. So now, finally, these two solutions work 100% with each other. Deployments are the next generation of associations. They're kind of the same, but a little bit better. Eventually, we'll depreciate, or not depreciate, we'll deprecate associations at some point in the future, maybe next year or something like that. We're not in a hurry to do so, but deployments are the next generation of distribution within FileWave, and we think you're going to enjoy them. And now, you can actually use the conversion tool that's in FileWave Anywhere here to convert these over into deployments, your deployments, and truly 100% get to deployments. So we're super, super excited about what those changes mean within the application and what that means for your environments. So we're so happy about those two things, and for us, this is really a major release, and we're very, very excited about that. But there's so much more in FileWave 15 than what you see just with deployments and us saying that the FileWave Anywhere is complete. I'm going to touch on a few things here. We're also you're going to be getting some marketing material over the next couple of weeks to kind of highlight the 15 things that we love about FileWave 15. And it wasn't hard to make the list because there's so many great things. So I'll just take a breath here and say that one of those things that we love and folks had asked for a while are actions and reports. So I've got two admins open here. I've got the older 14.10. So this is a 14.10 server here. If I go into devices, we've always had reports, so we can see the devices that are in my lab environment here. And the only thing that I've ever been able to do from these reports, so if I needed to do something, for instance, with this device, I could right click it. I could choose to reveal client, which will take me over to the client's view, and then I can do stuff, right? So I can do all these things with this device, but it's made me navigate away from the report. So when I said to you earlier that we care about efficiency, these are the kinds of changes that we're trying to make in FileWave, and we really do appreciate and love your feedback on these things. When we look at 15, how can we make that more efficient? Well, if we go into an inventory query and we just pick some random report, when we see that report, see all the goofy names that people have in here, you're going to notice that now we have a context menu directly within the report. So anything you can do with the device, you can do from the report directly. So if you need to remote control with TeamViewer into a device, not the case here with this iOS device, but all of those commands are now available from here. And so it's one less step. Additionally, I'm working here on Andriana's device. If I needed to do something with Andre's device here, I can stay in my report. I don't have to leave to do stuff. So I can go directly, say, into client info for this device, and then do the things that I need to do. So it's a small addition to the product, but that's an everyday kind of thing. And these are the things that we're trying to focus on as much as we possibly can. Things that make you more efficient on a day-to-day basis. Let me take a quick break there and just ask, I'm not watching the chat. So Josh, Derek, anybody, is there anything in the chat we should talk about? Or
no, just some thumbs up and nice. And
awesome. Happiness. This has an unintended consequence. I don't know if Howard's on today, but we were recently talking with a customer last week, and he said, "Boy, it'd be great. I really wish you had the ability to do smart groups with Chromebooks." And although we hadn't really thought about it very much, if there's an issue or something you want to do with Chromebooks, when you're looking at a breakdown, and I have it there, but let me go over to my other end. We're looking at a Chromebook here. You can't manipulate these groups. These just come in from Google, of course. And you can't, unlike other platforms, you can't create smart groups from them. But one thing that's interesting is because we've added the context menu within reports, that means that you can now create a report here in FileWave Central related to Chromebooks and actually take actions from them. So you're going to be able to effectively create smart groups for Chromebooks as well, which is kind of encouraging because you can use it to remediate problems with those. So we're looking forward to that. And it was totally accidental. I'd love to take credit and say, hey, yeah, sure, we thought about that, but we didn't actually. We just knew that it'd be helpful to have these context menus in here. So hopefully you're happy with that. I always think it's crazy to see what people do with the names of iPads when left to their own devices. So what else do we have in version 15, right? Well, of course, we have the Apple Spring Release support. And so I have trouble even keeping up with the version numbers anymore. I'm old enough at this point that I find, I can never remember. The numbers seem to change so much. But as always, there are profile changes in this, in the release both for DEP and for configuration profile changes as well. So all of those changes are in here, and of course support for the most recent iOS and macOS versions. We already supported them, of course, but the versions are actually reported correctly now, so it was working before. So that's always a big deal for us, and actually quite difficult for us to line up our releases with the Apple releases, but we try the best we can while we're still delivering value and all the other FileWave goodness. So we've got the Apple Spring Release support, several other things that I want to mention. We've added the ability, and I dare say it's about time, that we can duplicate profiles. So within the admin, if I look for a profile, for instance, we've got a restrictions profile, and this is the most frequent use case is on restrictions, where you might have a lot of stuff in a restriction and you just want to make a slightly different version of a restriction, but you want to reinvent the wheel. You can now right click and choose to duplicate a profile. And we'll see that pop in here in a second. Well, we have a second one for Block iCloud, and then we can just go in and edit it, change the name, etc., however we want to. But again, these are not earth-shattering, additions, but just really nice day-to-day things. And although I do love to add new features, I find that it's the day-to-day things that really make the difference. So we've got duplication of profiles. What else do we have? We have a default tracking state. For those of you who are tracking your devices, meaning not, in lost mode, but you just track them as a matter of course, where they're all set to normal tracking, if you will. There's now a preference for that. So you don't have to worry about newly enrolled devices. So when we look in here, you'll see that there's a default state for tracking devices. So you can see my environment here, it's set to untracked. That's the default position. But if we set this to track, that means that every newly enrolled device, so devices that enroll afterwards, it will be changed then to be tracked as a default, which saves you one more setting that you need to apply to those devices. So again, just trying to look at efficiency and things day-to-day life a little bit better. And of course, all of these requests have come from you. So we'll talk about product board and the roadmap, etc. later. But those requests are meaningful. I apologize if we can't get to all of them. There are a lot of great ones, but we tick them off as we go along. So I know I mentioned before that FileWave Anywhere is complete. And you may say it was complete in version 14.10 because you already did deployment. That is about deployments in FileWave Central. But the other part is the main use case, the day-to-day use case that we see for FileWave Anywhere has to do with using it as a technician, right? If you're in the field that's doing stuff with devices, we want the main things that you do every day, right? Probably not creating content, probably not creating a lot of payloads if you're in that, in the field role. Finding those content to devices, all the devices at, what payloads or file sets have installed, etc. But we had kind of a missing piece there that we didn't have really important for the field engineer persona, and that has to do with imaging, with Windows imaging in particular, that you have the ability to assign Windows images to devices. And I realize in this case that in demo here that I didn't actually create an image in here, but you'll see this looks very much like deployments, where you pick both the devices you want, the image that you want, and again, I should have created one in here, but I forgot about it. So you can pick the image that you want, you assign a driver pack if you want, and then you pick the devices that you want as well. So this really completes everything as we see it as important for the field engineer. We're certainly looking for feedback, in future. If you say, hey, we need to have this in FileWave Anywhere, we need to have that. We're looking for it now to grow organically. But FileWave itself, as far as we see this solution being built and what's included, what's not, it's done. There's still going to be things that we do some cleanup with and touch and do maintenance stuff, but the rest of what we do in here is going to be driven by you, the people that use it on a day-to-day basis. And we're really interested to see how much the utilization starts now, especially with deployments being available here and in FileWave Central. So we're super excited about this and really looking forward to it. Hopefully it makes your lives easier, that you'll be able to manage your environment, say from an iPad when you're traveling around, or as a matter of convenience, that you can get to it from the web quickly. So we're pretty excited about that. There's a slew of other things that we're not going to touch on today. I will mention just one more kind of feature here is on the licensing report side of things. In the older admin, so again, this is in 14.10, when you would look here, we've got a license report. Let's look for one where we've got something actually assigned. So here we've got an app, and this is my lab, so we don't have too many things. But when you double click on that, it takes you to a report where you are seeing the license detail view. Not a great view. This is much better when you're looking at a regular application, not a VPP app. So this is the old version. And I don't have anything in this demo environment that shows licensing detail because VPP licenses in it. But let me show you a screenshot of one showing the report. So what you get now is something like this. When you look at that, you're going to see the device ID, the serial number, what the actual client name is, any user information you can, and license distribution information as well. So greatly, this has just got one record in, of course, but if you had lots, you would see all the detail in there too. So really enhancing that reporting. There's at least 7 or 8 additional really nice little ads like this that are in it, but we're going to save some of those as surprises with some of the marketing material here you'll be getting on the next few days. So super excited about that. Any questions before I move on to talk about kind of what's next? So FileWave 15 with QA today. We expect it to release by the end of the month, the very latest, the very beginning of June. All right, so on the feature side, that kind of wraps it up for what I'm going to cover today. But I did want to mention two things that on the other notes, although now I can't remember what I meant by other. We've got decommission of ZMQ, a full decommission of that now. So ZMQ was replaced by NATS. Our NATS protocol was implemented about 8 months or so ago, and that's been put in place while ZMQ was still there, so it could be leveraged. That is now fully deprecated, and ZMQ is no longer used. So what that means is there's a couple of ports that you won't have to have open anymore. So you'll see that in the release notes. You can turn off those ports if you're security conscious. So we recommend that you do, since they won't be needed. And there are some implications to some very old clients, some notifications that they won't be able to send. So if you've got a lot of devices that are running very old archived versions of the FileWave client because they can't run newer, there'll be slight implication there, but nothing functional. You'll still be able to deploy file sets and such to them. We'll list that in the release notes as well. The other decommission note that's in FileWave 15 has to do with device discovery. It is a very sparsely used tool. It's basically actually an integration of InMap into our boosters that you could use to scan the subnets. That technology wasn't really used by folks. We found it slow and cumbersome and limited in its implementation. So we've decided to remove it, and it sounds like a small thing, but it's actually about 25,000 lines of code have left the product to do that, so we can focus on some other things. We do still recommend several other tools that can do that kind of outside of FileWave, and frankly just do a better job of it. So it wasn't our core competency. It's kind of a side thing that had just been in the product for a long time, but really wasn't used in any environment. So that has been removed as well. We're not removing the inventory related to anything you might have run a discovery on in this release. That will be in the next one, but we'll be watching to see if anybody would be impacted by that. So that device discovery tool on boosters won't be there anymore. And by the other note I meant here is that there's just a lot of other things that we haven't yet covered in this venue. We just don't have the time to cover them all. So there's so many little things, but management of smart groups and groups in FileWave Anywhere is now a little slicker and neater. There's a concept of a bottom bar in FileWave Anywhere that makes actions on common devices easier. We're just super thrilled with this release, and I know I probably keep saying that over and over again, but we're very excited to see this one get out the door, and we hope you're excited with it as well.
There was
any
one.
Questions? Yeah.
There was one comment. Igor asked if you could touch more on the Windows imaging, like additions, I guess, in FileWave Anywhere.
Yeah, so it's limited. It's not about creation of images. It's just about assignment of images. So any images that you've already got created, you can now assign them to devices and remove those associations as well from within FileWave Anywhere. It's not actually a change. It's a subset of what you can do in FileWave Central. We don't see the Anywhere tool being the tool that you would use to create an image, to capture an image, but it is the tool that we think will be very useful for the field engineer for assigning an image. So any driver paths or images that are already created can be assigned to any device. And you can, of course, change the imaging, MAC addresses and such.
Yeah, and unlike the whole associations versus deployments, the imaging things that you see in Anywhere, it's the same information. When you set it in Anywhere, you see it in Central. When you set it in Central, you see it in Anywhere.
That's correct. It's always been kind of its own little bubble, the way that imaging associations work, and it's continued to be that way. So it's exactly the same thing. You'll see exactly the same thing between Anywhere and Central with regard to imaging associations. So anybody will be able to create them in either platform or remove them.
Okay.
Right. So that means, if you get a placeholder device, you can create the placeholder in FileWave Anywhere. You can assign the image that you've already got to that placeholder. You can take your new device out of the box, fire it up, and as long as that MAC address is right, it's going to match up an image of that device just like it would from FileWave Central.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk about what's next, right? So what's next is FileWave 15.1. What are we focusing on with this? I am a big believer in function over form normally, because of course, as I said, we're very much focused on efficiency of you and our product and what you do on a day-to-day basis. But it's been, well, I've been at FileWave for 6 years. We've never changed the look and feel of the FileWave Central Administrative Console in the entire time that I've been here. And that form is starting to hurt us when we're talking to prospects and they look at our product and go, ooh, it's old. Right. And you may say, well, I've already bought FileWave. I don't care that it looks like that. That's true. But the more that we sell to new people, to new folks, to new customers, the more we can invest in doing the other things that we really want to do on the function side of things. So we're spending a little time here with some facelifts in version 15.1. And that's a facelift for FileWave Central. This is not a UX change. It's a UI change. So we're not really changing workflows. We may eventually do some stuff to make those things a little more efficient, but this is primarily a UI update in FileWave Central. We're also doing kind of a mini refresh in FileWave Anywhere, and this is just to make the two products look very, very similar. In fact, you can kind of see some of those things already. We'll just break away from this for just a second. In FileWave Anywhere, this is, I've been logged out here. So this is the older version. So this is 14.10, what you all have in place today. And you'll see that when logs in, this kind of a gray color and the different font. So here in 15, some of that's already been implemented. It's a little stronger color with different icons. The same iconography, the same color schemes, etc., are being done in Central and in Anywhere. Now, that work is ongoing right now. So when we look here and say, hey, what's next to the things we're currently working on, I mean, literally, we just started this week with the actual work on the facelift for Central. And here's some examples of some of those things. So let me just kind of step through these. Now, these are works in progress, right? And this was just an application of a theme to our existing product. So we use Qt for our administrative console for the native-based ones for FileWave Central. And so you'll see some things that need touched on, like there's spacing here, but you can see, icons, color scheme, fonts, etc. in this. I know there were questions last time about dark mode. We're not supporting dark mode out of the box with this Central refresh, but we will be positioned better to do it in future with this refresh in place. So here's just some samples, and you can see here that we've got some colors of text to deal with and stuff. This is not at all meant to say, hey, this is what it's going to look like. It's just a feel and to show that, it's a work in progress. We're actively working on this now. And this is that theme applied to my, test environment here. So updated icons, updated fonts, updated color scheme, and just trying to make the app look like more of a native application on each of the platforms. So we're excited about this change and what it might mean for folks who are evaluating FileWave for the first time, and that we expect to be delivering here sometime in the fall, most likely. We're a little challenged here over the summer between this work and the fall release from Apple. Of course, we won't know until June what's included in that fall release. So we're working on several things here over the summer. We may or may not have a release in the summertime. It kind of depends. If the work that we're working on for these facelifts goes really well and everything kind of clicks into place, we might have a release sometime midsummer that includes those pieces. If that takes a little longer, and we're kind of we expect it to take a little longer with some of the changes that we're making and of course with the Apple fall release, though we might not see a release until fall, but we're playing that a little bit by ear, but you'll be the first to know as we kind of hone in on what we're going to do there. So we've got these three main topics that we're working on in FileWave 15.1, which is the facelift for FileWave Central, for FileWave Anywhere, and then you notice I also mentioned the Kiosk here, and Kiosk is a big deal. It's used so much in all of our customer environments. It's the way to make customers, kind of self-service. We haven't touched that from a look and feel perspective since I've been with FileWave either. Unlike what we're doing with FileWave Central, though, the Kiosk we are rewriting in new technology, but the MVP for that, the minimum viable product that we'll be releasing, will be basically the same functionality that we have today. So I happen to have the Kiosk here on my machine, and what you can do with it is not you can install software, of course. So things that are in here and that you can install are published. This, we're working on a new technology that will show this in the kiosk on Mac, on Windows, for iOS. We'll all be using the same technology. What we're excited about with that is it's going to put us in a place where you're going to be able to use themes that you can readily download from the internet and apply a theme to style that kiosk in a way that really makes it yours much more easily than you can do today. Of course, that MVP again is going to replicate the current functionality that we have, but the refresh here on the kiosk is so that we can do things like notification. Like, wouldn't it be great if it actually told me if it did an OS-based notification of that? So this is to set us up for that eventual future work that we hope to maybe touch on sometime starting in the fall. But this is this refresh for kiosk is preliminary work to be able to support that, right? So we're working on proof of concept of that here over the summer, and if all goes well, we'll have something to on at least some of the platforms in the fall. So iOS is kind of the main one, hopefully for macOS, for Windows, we'll see. But we're very excited about this change because across the board now, what we're going to be doing is making FileWave look like the same product, whether you're looking at FileWave Central, you're looking at FileWave Anywhere, or you're looking at FileWave Kiosk. So we're very excited about that. We're also doing some deep work on model update. So model update is obviously integral part of the product. It's the way that we tell FileWave that, hey, things have changed. We're working on some improvements with that. So there's some new code being written to handle model updates, and we're hoping to see a performance improvement in model update. I won't share the figure that the developers told me, but they hope to see let's say at least a double-digit percentage improvement in the time to do a model update. So we're hoping to see some really nice performance boosts out of that. Again, we're playing the delivery with this. We're not quite sure whether it will be ready, and because this is so important to us that we have to make sure that everything tests good with this, because it's a very important piece of FileWave for us to touch. So we have to make sure that we've done it right. So we'll spend a whole lot of extra time testing that one before we release it, but that we're working on now as well. On the Windows side of the house, we're looking at some more granular controls for MSIs. That's in two ways. One, FileWave is great. You can drag an MSI in and you can deploy it to devices and it all works silently and beautifully. And that's super, except when it doesn't, right? So what happens if the MSI itself actually has problems installing? Now, FileWave doesn't control that. It's the MSI that's doing it. But it would be great if FileWave told you exactly what the error was that was going on with that MSI. So we're looking to improve our logging within FileWave. So if an MSI goes bad, if it goes a little rogue, that we get better logging information from that. The other thing that we're looking to do here is to look at allowing you to modify command line switches. So for those of you who manage Windows devices, with MSIs, when you drag them into FileWave and you go to distribute them, we automatically make them silent. The way we make them silent is because we use the /qn command line parameters for that MSI that makes it run quiet with no notification, right? So that's what makes it quiet. But what if you want to do something different than the way that we automatically do it? We totally support that. You can do it today, but to do it today, you have to write a script to do it. Most folks will do that in a bash file that calls MSI exec, that passes the parameters of the path to the MSI and then whatever command line switches that you want to use. We're looking to expose those command line switches in the actual file set itself, so you can just specify other switches there and make it a little easier without having to write scripts to support that MSI. So again, trying to make things more efficient, just ever so slightly easier, on a day-to-day basis. All right. Other things, of course, I mentioned the Apple Fall release. We don't know what's in that. We'll find out in June, and we'll start working on that. But that will be, of course, for a fall delivery. And we're also looking at some improvements in FileWave Anywhere. As I said, we were done, but we'll keep tweaking a little bit. We know that a field technician is going to spend most of their time in the device view. looking at an individual device with it. Why did all this? Why is it doing that? Kind of thing. So we're looking to make some improvements within FileWave Anywhere to that device view. In particular, we're looking at the ability that you can define your own fields when looking at a device, which fields you want to be the kind of predominant ones that show for you. We're super excited about that because it's going to allow some customization. We think will probably filter its way back to FileWave Central as well. But this also gives us an area where we can kind of innovate, test things out without, making it very helpful, hopefully, for the field technician. There's a QR code here that links to our product board roadmaps and kind of our, feature request boards. I can't tell you how important it is to us to do that. As I mentioned before, we have lots of requests, lots of very, very good requests. We can't get to them all, but the more that you submit them, right, the more it tells us how important it is to folks in our various customer environments. So it's super important to us that you give that feedback, and we thank you so much for those who have given it. Most of that feedback has gone directly into the things that you're seeing here within the roadmap. So this is our current plan, right? What we're working on now. We're actually in development with this, and we'll be working on for the next few months. What's coming after that, if there are no questions? Josh, are there any questions or anything so far?
There was one that I don't know if you'll know offhand, but Michael was curious about on Windows. When you right click on the kiosk icon and it doesn't give you the menu at first, like it pops it up. He was curious if in the new redesign, if you'd just be able to simply do that right click and get to the menu without it popping up. But I didn't know if you tried that and remembered.
Yeah, I don't know that one. I don't know that one offhand. What we're likely doing, the way the kiosk works today, is it's entirely. So you've probably seen it by name. That it's an application called FWGUI, right? .app on the Mac side, and of course an executable on the Windows side. So it's its own executable. What we'll be doing is, I realize I'm meaning to here, but I meant to come over here. What we're going to do is this is still going to be an app, but what you're seeing here is most likely going to be an iframe of a web app. This is not a web app right now for Mac and Windows, so this part will likely be a web application. So we're still working out details. We're working on the POC for this right now. And as I mentioned, we'll probably start with iOS because that one just basically uses it as a web clip already. It's a little bit more complicated on the desktop side of things with Mac and Windows devices, but that's part of this project, is working through that POC. So we're super excited about this, though, because we just haven't touched the UI elements here in the kiosk for a long time. And there's a lot of stuff we'd like with it. You've all given great requests about making kiosk more than what it is today. And so they're looking to do, but we're going to be restyling it first to put us in the position with the technology to do so.
There was sort of two other questions. Igor, I was asking, if there were, and there was nothing I knew of, but if there were any roadmap plans for anything with artificial intelligence, like a thing to help with scripting or anything, or I didn't think there was because we would have chatted about it. I mentioned the knowledge base is using some stuff.
Yeah, we're using it more operationally for something. Well, I say we, I mean Josh. Is using it more operationally. Our POs have been using it operationally for documentation and stuff, but we haven't talked too much about it yet as far as being implemented in the product. No, not in the short term.
That's what I thought. And Jose wondered about Mac OS updates. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that even later in the AMA, but will they get better with Nudge and time zone support for our users around the world? Now, for Nudge, I could say we have a KB article posted now. So Jose, you might want to look over at the KB. There's a file set that uses Nudge that could help you use it with FileWave. But I also know later we're going to talk about there were some AMA questions around.
I think we'll probably table that one to talk about during the AMA. But I also think that's a really good question. It might be very good, and this kind of segues into some stuff that Josh will talk about later. But this might be a good webinar for us to do about using Nudge. And so I think that I don't know. I'm not watching chat right now, but just show of hands. I wonder how many folks have attended any of those webinars. They've been well attended, and then of course they're being published on YouTube. So that's a great topic for that. So that one will probably take offline and talk about some best practice stuff. But to say that the move to Mac OS software updates through MDM has not been the smoothest would be an understatement, right? So, but we can do some things to really improve that a bit. So that might be a great topic for one of the Discord-based webinars.
Yep, I agree. And we are going to make smaller ones, kind of like that iOS wallpaper one we did that was a shorter one focused on a single topic. And I think especially around the FileWave 15 stuff, there might be separate ones or one just on the stuff in 15. So that would be good.
Yeah, I was looking at our analytics the other day, and I was actually surprised by the few number of folks that have used that iOS wallpaper functionality so far. I highly recommend, if you haven't had a chance to look at what it's for and how you can use it, to take a look at that webinar. And again, that's on the YouTube channel. It's there and recorded, and it's a simple, easy thing, but I think it could really make a difference in most environments on a day-to-day basis.
I agree. And there was somebody raised the question that I think you will agree that you'd like to, is the ability to, within Kiosk especially, to run a one-off like utility script. Something that's meant for
there's so many things. Yeah, that one's published on our product board as one of the big ideas, because the things that leap to mind for me about the kiosk are, one, I want to know if there's something new in the kiosk, right? Is there a security update that I need to run that maybe my administrator has made it so that I can choose when to run it when I want to? But I need to know that it's there. It just can't be magical that it shows up and I don't have notification. So notification, I think, is a big deal. The ability to message the end customer that's on the device, like I just want to send out a global message to say, hey, remember tomorrow night's Patch Tuesday, or whatever kind of message you want to send out to devices. That kind of messaging is super important. And the ability of kind of two things related to utility type of stuff in FileWave Kiosk. One is that Kiosk, the way it is today, it's just an install or uninstall kind of thing. It's kind of a binary thing like that. We really do like the ability you can run it, and then it's just available to run again. Examples of things like that would be a script that kind of cleans up empty, trash folders and stuff just to free up disk space. Little things like that are good for a customer to run. It could be inclusion of things like, hey, creating a trouble ticket, for the service desk, however that works, that you could click a button and it would go run the thing, and you could create a ticket, or that type of thing that you'd have one-offs. And then the other thing that's somewhat related to that we've had is this idea of a technician toolkit, that when you sit down and you're the engineer that sits at a workstation, that you'd have kind of a hidden area of the kiosk that you could authenticate into to be able to see stuff that you wouldn't publish for normal users, but you might want to run when you're local at the machine. And to publish those and make that easy as well. There's probably 10 additional things related to Kiosk that are in there, but again, it gives me an opportunity to talk about the roadmap and product board and going in there and publishing those ideas. The more the merrier on that, because we really do love all the feedback on this. So if you've got ideas of other things you'd like to see in Kiosk, don't just sit and say, well, somebody else probably has already said this. One, they may have, right? We've got a long list of stuff that people have asked for, but it's not just about that somebody asked for it. It's also how many people ask for it that influences how we approach a topic. So, somebody asks us for a feature, but that feature request only is going to help that one environment. It's not super valuable in the product for everybody else. So we're not going to prioritize it in the same way we would something that's important for most environments, right? So, we're most likely going to try to come up with some kind of API work or a script-based thing to do that kind of work. But we're really looking for things that resonate across environments. And we've got kind of a luxury of having customers in so many different types of environments. We've got education, enterprise, healthcare, etc. But most of the needs are actually kind of common, even though we're crossing verticals there. But the more feedback you can give us, the better. And especially, I will say this, Giving feedback about it, saying it would be great to have this feature is helpful, but what's even more helpful is to give kind of a use case of why, right? Because Johnny, the technician in the field, wants to run a cleanup script, but we don't want to give that to the user. Is a great example of giving some context to that feature request. So we really do appreciate the feedback.
Okay, I think we're generally good to move on, and we can come back to things in the AMA as well.
Yeah, we have. And so let me talk about just this one thing here, one more thing before we kind of pass it over to Derek and Josh. Again, this is the longer term roadmap. This is not stuff that we're working on currently, but these are things that we're planning on working on soon. The first on these is third-party patching. And again, I'm going to plug those webinars that we've been doing on Discord because we can do third-party patching today. We fully support it. We integrate with Wingit and we integrate with AutoPKG, and you can do those things today. There's good material on both of those. Had a session in the Discord chat. It's in the YouTube channel. Take a look at doing those. I know that we were in an environment here just, I think, the week before last, and we were troubleshooting something that was going on in a Windows client, and we're like, why was it taking a little time to go through and do a verify? Well, it turns out there were several Wingit third-party packages that were assigned to the device, and the verification was going through and seeing through the update those applications that was actually applying those updates. C2C percent do it today, but when we're talking about third-party patching here, what we're talking about is making it a little bit easier to do both of those things. So we're looking at a front end on Wingit and a front end on AutoP, just to give you a GUI interface to be able to select those packages. So let's say for Firefox, you would have a solution where you say, hey, add a third-party patch, and you see a list of applications that come from Wingit, and you can pick one of those and click create, and it creates the file set for you that you would deploy like any other file set. But we'll just make it a little bit easier for you to create it without having to do any scripting. And the same thing for side, where we're looking to provide a user interface to that to make it more seamless to bring that content into FileWave. But the foundations of it, the bones of it, are still the implementations that we have today. We'll see UX improvements and UI improvements there. So we're really excited about that work. We've been talking about that for quite some time, and the teams have been evaluating exactly how we're going to do that technically. The second that we hope to do concurrently if we can, but it might be in a release following, are enhancements to software update. So this is a thing where we can deploy OS updates, security updates for Mac and Windows devices, iOS devices, etc. But there's a number of things we'd like to enhance to make that more efficient, particularly around what today are a lot of individual manual actions. So for instance, Microsoft Tuesday comes out with their list of 12 patches. For each of those patches today, I have to go through and click create and then assign and then create and assign. So we're looking at basically mass actions with software updates where you can pick all 12 and say, okay, go ahead and create these and assign them to my patch testing group or assign them to production in a way that you can do it a little more efficiently. Additionally, as I mentioned before, this is the Kiosk tie-in that I talked about with the kind of the UI refresh of the Kiosk, is those additional capabilities that we talked about. So all three of these first things are kind of on the docket. They're the next things up when we start our next development cycles. And the last one that we're just seriously considering, but we haven't had a lot of feedback, is on Chromebooks. We think there's a whole lot of management that can be done on the Chromebook side that would make your lives easier. And I'm not just talking about folks that use us today for Chromebooks, but I'm also talking about if you have Chromebooks in your environment, but you don't use us today. We'd love to talk to you about why you don't use us, what it is you'd like to see. Is it related to deploying extensions to those devices? Is it about policies that are being sent to the devices? The APIs that support them, we're trying to figure out, is it a good business move for us to do it? We think it is. We think we can actually help a lot of environments on this. So love to talk to you about that. If you have any interest in talking about Chromebook support and functionality on the Chromebook side, please do reach out. You can reach out directly to me, Tony Keller, and I would love to talk to you about that. So with that, that's kind of, this is the more longer reaching stuff. We'll probably be working on these things around year end is when we'll be working on it. So we're probably looking at some kind of release related to third-party patching, either very close to the end of the year, but more likely right at the beginning of the next year. So any other questions or anything there, Josh, before I hand the mic
No,
over?
I think you could move on. Is the next thing the switch?
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, and I'll be back. Well, I'll probably chime in with the stuff that Josh talked about.
Alrighty.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. For those that haven't met me before, my name is Derek Deckard. I'm the head of support here at FileWave. Been here for quite some time. So if you've been a customer for a while, I'm sure you've spoken to me at some point or seen me when we used to do the in-person conferences. Hopefully we can get back to those one of these days. But for now, I have some operational updates to go over with you. It's just kind of some things that are coming up here on the horizon and that we're doing in the background, but hopefully some good changes. So the first one, those of you that those of you that have your server on Linux probably are aware that CentOS is in maintenance mode currently and will be officially end of life summer of next year. So we've been looking at some alternatives, and we've actually decided that we're going to go with Alma Linux as the replacement. As I did mention, some of the customers do host with us, right? So we have their system in our cloud infrastructure, and we maintain those servers and we upgrade those servers and whatnot. So those servers you guys don't have to worry about. Obviously, we'll do all of that on the background. And then, sorry, I'm trying not to just read the bullet points for you guys. But we're working on a migration path for those of you that do have these systems on-prem, right? So as far as I understand how it's going to work is we'll be able to just run some scripts that will upgrade your server in place from CentOS to Alma Linux. But first we got to get some things in place with FileWave itself, right? So one of those first steps is this FileWave 15 has some things, and then there will be another release that will actually run on Alma Linux, and then we'll start sharing the process, right? And then we'll obviously reach out to let you guys know when that's available. We'll have KBs, be able to answer all these questions, help you guys through the process and all that. So we're not going to throw it at you and expect you to deal with it. We'll help you through it since, we're the ones that have to make this change. If during this time frame you guys start to decide that, hey, you don't want to manage your server anymore, like as I mentioned, we do host servers for customers, please reach out to customer experience. They can give you some information about us hosting your server for you if you'd prefer to go down that road. And if you forget who I just mentioned, you can always reach out to support, and we'll redirect you guys. And then the last point, right? If you're running a macOS server, nothing's changing on that end, right? We always keep up with the new OS as those get released. So here, like Tony was mentioning in the fall, we're going to have to do all the Apple updates, right? They'll release a new OS that will have to make sure that the server runs on it as well. Any questions real quick on the Alma Linux migration?
There was a question about wondering when the host change would be happening. So if we're talking about hosted, then we've actually sort of had about 20 something customers on what we call Cloud V2 for a couple of years now. But more recently with this more active move, we just moved 6 folks over to make sure that we're good with everything, and with our processes, because our intent is to move over the next month or so, move everything that is currently in AWS as like a standalone virtual server. So if people don't know, our hosted is kind of your computer running in Amazon's cloud. But what we're moving to is a more modern, Docker, Kubernetes thing that move should happen in the next 1 to 2 months. Our hope would be in the next 1 month you would be done, but things can never. Sometimes they slip. You'll find something.
I had forgotten to
push
mention
out.
that those of you that are currently hosted with us, the majority of our customers are on what Josh said is Cloud V1, right? We have a couple hundred customers running on that system, and we're migrating those customers to the new system. It's happening currently. It'll be done before we make this move to Alma Linux.
Yeah, and the other thing is Cloud V2 does not depend on CentOS versus Alma Linux. It kind of throws that worry out the window. You won't have to think about it. We won't have to think about it. It'll all be in that, what we're calling Cloud V2. The only people that will have to think about CentOS versus Alma Linux are people with on-prem systems. And you can also still run on Mac OS, your server. And for those on-premise, you could move to our Cloud V2, which again would eliminate any dealings with Alma Linux for you. And if you want to stay on-prem, there will be a script. There already is a script that exists. It's just you couldn't really run it because it would put you on a beta of version 15, and that wouldn't be a good situation. So we have to release 15, like Derek said, and then we'll be able to publish a script that you could take your server over to. And we'll publish all sorts of documentation. It's a pretty simple process.
Let me answer a couple of questions that were in there.
Yeah.
Josh. There was a question about we're going to move the OVAs over to Alma Linux. That's one of the things that, so generally our including this slide here wasn't to make everybody panic. It was just to let everybody know that these are things that are going to be coming up over this next year. So what we'll be doing is, yes, at some point we're going to start publishing our OVAs as being Alma Linux so that we won't continue to, create basically technical debt by having new folks come on. And it's also a great way of us being able to test that we don't have any issues, right? If we stand up somebody brand new on Alma Linux with FileWave that never, ever ran on CentOS, that's great. It's a great test environment and it doesn't put anything at risk. So eventually we'll publish the OVAs to be Alma Linux directly. But for those who already have an existing environment, the upgrade path is more an upgrade of CentOS and then an upgrade from CentOS to Alma Linux in kind of in a scripted fashion. But all the details and documentation surrounding that will need to be done is not complete yet. So we're working on that, and we'll be publishing that and sharing that. And so this is mostly a heads up that, hey, between now and in next summer that we'll, have that set up for you and that you'll want to think about that. But there was a great question here about pros and cons of hosted versus on-prem. As Derek mentioned, if you don't want to be bothered really with any of this, that's one of the reasons that we offer the hosted solution. And so what are the pros of that? The pros of being hosted basically means you don't have to ever go to the command line on the server again. You don't have to be there. We do all of that stuff for you. So when it comes to version upgrades, we handle the FileWave server upgrades. Of course, you're still updating your own boosters and clients, but we'll handle the server upgrades for you, and that includes backups. And I mentioned backups because that's the thing that a lot of times gets forgotten about until it's way too late, and you need access to that. So all of this is in our cloud and done automatically, so we have you covered on that. Right.
Okay. There was actually a good thing that Charles brought up in the chat about running containers on-prem. Something we should probably chat about internally with the cloud team is, some software vendors do publish, Docker containers to run yourself. Maybe we should think about that. I don't think we have that idea written down yet. So, Charles, that'll be something that I'll chat with our cloud team about. There was a thing about Ubuntu that I commented in chat about that Alma was the easier choice to go to. Partially because it was CentOS 8 binary compatible. That was one thing that kind of had it be that and Rocky Linux Lever binary compatible with CentOS 8. So it made it sort of an easy pro. Okay. So then I think that topic's good. Okay. So then on to the next.
A new ticketing system. So for those of you that know, we currently use Jira as the supports ticketing system. we are going to be moving to HubSpot, which is our CRM. So we're hopeful. Like it says, what do you need to do as a customer? The hope is nothing. One of the things that I didn't think about that Tony pointed out to me is if you have set a bookmark for, support's web portal, that will possibly change, right? It's still going to be help.filewave.com. That's probably the easiest way to get to us, right? You just hop on a browser and go to help.filewave.com, but that does redirect to Jira's specific customer portal. So if you've bookmarked that page, then that will obviously change. But if you can just update that to help.filewave.com, that'll be good. We are migrating all your previous tickets, so we'll still have access to all of that history. Everything will be in there. And then the last part is, when is it happening? It's all dependent on these other projects, right? So like Josh mentioned, we're currently in the process of migrating the Cloud V1 to Cloud V2. Once that gets done, then we will start this process as well. We'll be sending out information to you guys about, when it's going to happen. More than likely, it'll be over a weekend that we'll do the final migration of everything and do our checks and whatnot. And then you'll come in on a Monday morning, and all the redirects will just be going to the new system. And again, there really shouldn't be anything for you guys to do. Maybe make note beforehand of just like how many open tickets you have. Obviously, we'll keep both systems in place for a bit just in case something does go wrong. But in theory, it should be good to go. One of the nice things that I like about the new system is we are going to, those of you that use the web portal itself, we're going to add a little bit more requirements for creating tickets, just because it gives support that extra information up front, so we can stop with a little bit of the back and forth, right? Because I know some of the questions we end up asking right out of the gate a lot of times is, what version are you running? What OS is this? Those sort of things. So we're going to try and have those answered from the get-go. You guys can always still use the email option too, right? It's also help@filewave.com. Some of you probably have been here long enough that you also have support@filewave.com. That one also works. It's just a redirect. So if you want to make sure you're using the main ones, it is, and the easiest ones to remember is just help.filewave.com and help@filewave.com. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Not a question, but I do have a comment.
Okay.
Right. You didn't mention the phone support, but I did want to just mention phone support. There's kind of a general feel a lot of times that if I pick up the phone, it's the best way to go, but likely it's not. So we don't staff at a level to have somebody sitting there available to pick up the phone immediately when you call. So what happens with those calls is, of course, they're being recorded, and then somebody picks up and creates a ticket from it. But it's actually much easier to have the detail in that original ticket. So as Derek mentioned, the voicemails as well, they create a lot of back and forth about then details. So we have to then follow up. I think it's more efficient, and I think it's showing in our metrics that it's more efficient when a ticket comes in through the web form, because we get better data there. So, and no, Israel, it does not go to my phone number. But yeah, I mean, we love our support team, and I think we give great support, especially compared to so many organizations. It's really the thing that we love to do. But I think phone slows you down, which is not our goal. So the web form is best, and then we can share that across teams better too. So. And that part's not changing at all, if I remember correct. Yeah. Phone still works just as it was before.
Correct. It's mostly in the US has a phone number and EU has a phone number. But as Tony mentioned, the teams try to answer the phones, but it's just like anything else, right? If they're working with a current customer, they're not going to put that customer on hold or something to answer the phone and then get tied up on something else, because, we try to give everybody the same amount of attention, especially when you're working with them. So that's why we kind of prefer the ticketing system, because we do just, it just builds up a queue, probably like most of you have in your own organizations, and we just hit all the tickets that we can and just trying to keep everything moving.
Well, the other nice thing about a ticket coming in versus the phone is, Shayna may answer the phone, but James might be the best at, that particular kind of problem. So going into the queue, everybody that's, the best at a thing might pick the tickets that they know that they could solve quicker. And so it lets you get to more of the subject matter expert, because, like, it's hard to be a master of everything. So like within PS, amongst like Emma and Sean and Andrew and Ramel will, have somebody that's really good at a particular thing and shift things around within PS. And same as support. Okay. So then I think the ticket system is good, and I think you guys will like it. I've seen the migration of tickets. It brings everything over from the old tickets. It was really nice. So then
I will just mention as well on that, Josh, that the move also makes it much easier for us to kind of see tickets related to an organization in a way that Jira didn't. Right. So Jira, we could create kind of a false environment where it looked like, okay, where all the tickets coming from a particular organization, but doing this within our CRM actually makes that reporting much easier as well. So I think we'll actually see. I actually think our support team is probably the best part. Well, I would say it's the best part of FileWave. No offense to any of the other teams, but I love our support group and what they do for our customers. But I think this will even move it a notch forward.
Yeah, I guess one. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say we're the fun group.
And I steal everybody from your group.
That's true.
So one thing that people may not know is that professional services used to use Jira just like support uses Jira. When I joined 2 years ago, we were using Jira, and we moved over to HubSpot when, as a company, we moved to HubSpot for our CRM. One of the reasons I did that was so that customer experience, who works with a lot of you folks, they would have an easier way to see about custom projects and things. And that probably started us down the road of thinking about where support should be as well. And so now with this move, customer experience, support, and professional services are all in one sort of ticket management system. So we can all see each other's stuff, and we'll be able to communicate better. And that works out for you guys. So. Okay, so on to the pro services stuff. So everybody should know me, hopefully. Josh Levitsky. I run professional services and training. And I want to talk about some things. Some of these slides will be similar to past Alliance meetings. I've kind of found that I have a collection of topics that I want to make sure that I update you guys on. So the slides will generally be the same, actually, moving forward, just the details will change. So we're going to talk about different things like training, for instance. So we started to think about new administrators. We had a lot of cases of there was an administrator there who used FileWave for years and years. They left, a new person came in, and we always had this informal process where we would speak with somebody about our paid offerings and our free offerings for training a new administrator. But we didn't really have standard sort of offerings. Standard offerings help for customer experience to just explain what we could do without necessarily looping me into a call. But we're global, and we use a lot of partners. So it also lets our partners sell these things to somebody. It lets more people be aware they exist, because you could have access to a library of things we have. Over the past 2 years, I run into a lot of people that weren't quite sure that we had professional services and training offerings, and then they're happy to find out we do. And so we're just going to have some more definition rather than just selling you 4 hours of training. There'll be some more definition about what that is. As well, we've also done server migrations. The whole time I've been here, we've done migrations from on-prem to SaaS, on-prem to on-prem. And we would do it by selling you a certain number of hours, and we didn't really have it documented about what was going to happen. So you'd have to ask, and we'd have to tell you. But now there's a PDF that says what to expect in a migration project. We're going to do more of that, documenting what we offer, so that you know what we have and what you could expect. And this little guy is in the image is, the new administrator that's overwhelmed. That's what I was going for there. As far as communities go, so we launched Discord, and actually even before that, we launched the Alliance Forum. So in September last year, we launched the Web Forum. Then in December, we launched the Discord chat. And the last Alliance meeting, there was an average of about 60 people on at any given time. And now it's more like 80. So I know it's trending higher. Last quarter, we, I think, had maybe 300 members. Now we're at 477 when I looked yesterday. So there are certainly people joining there. Over on the Alliance Forum, I don't have the numbers here, but there is some activity there as well. We're watching both. From my team, we're watching both forums. We're trying to answer things if someone else doesn't jump in and answer it, or if it's an answer that only a FileWave person could give. We're trying to support both environments. And the question comes up, why have two? For some folks, Discord is a lot. A chat environment is real time, and the pace is a little faster versus Alliance forums. A web-based forum, it does a specific thing. It also is indexed by Google. So sometimes when you search through Google, you're going to see Alliance forum results. It's good for us to have that. So I'd say if you're just trying to ask a quick question and you're not trying to be so heavily involved, the Alliance forum can be good. But Discord, if FileWave is at the center of your client, your endpoint management, and it's part of your everyday, Discord is a great thing to join. And that's why we're hosting those training sessions there. But we're aware that not everyone's in Discord, which is why they're published to YouTube as well. They're published there so that you can watch it anytime, because we know with time zones, we're global. 10 a.m. new time is not great if you're in the Philippines, because it's 10 p.m. there. So okay, so just look for those to get, more and more activity, more people. Join if you haven't, whichever one you'd prefer. And I mentioned those trainings. We call them Discord chats. Since the last Alliance meeting, we've held quite a few in the past 3 months. So, and these are all on YouTube. You can get to that with one of these QR codes with the Connect on Social that lists our YouTube channel. But we've done best practices specifically for boosters. There was a getting started with Grafana, and Emma ran that Grafana session. We talked about it, and in a couple of months we're going to do another one, kind of a repeat of that, because Grafana will have some updates, and as well on that earlier session, we found that our lab server was a little underpowered, so there were some hiccups, but we're going to be doing that again. Actually, our Grafana server was just moved over to Cloud V2, and the performance is quite a bit better. So we're going to have that session again just to have a better experience. Pro services, open office hours. Although it's listed with all these things, it actually is sort of like a standalone thing. It's a really great thing. It's once a month right now, and it falls into, I forget exactly the day. I think it's like the third Tuesday or something. I'll show it to you in Discord when we go to do the AMA. But we have this once a month session where you can ask anything you want. Some people join regularly to kind of hang out and chit chat, and that's cool. And I do want to expand it to have times that are good for Europe and times that are good for Asia Pacific as well. I haven't taken that step to do that, but we are going to do that. Custom iOS wallpapers was a session around that functionality that was just added to 14.10. And that was good. And if you don't know how to do the custom iOS wallpapers, then the YouTube video will help you. We did third-party patching on Mac OS. That was around Auto Packager. On Windows, it was about WinGet. But it also just in generally talked about third-party patching. Andreas here at FileWave, he just had his first monthly session for German speakers. And he did that in Discord. And I haven't checked in with him about how it went, but it's going to be a monthly thing. So if you want to be part of that, just go into the Discord and you'll see that session is there to sign up for. This Friday, I'm going to do a thing on AI. I did sessions a few months back. Discord didn't have as many people in it, but you may have missed it. I didn't record it back then. It was before I figured out that I wanted to record things and post them on YouTube. So this one I should record and post, and it'll just be in general about using AI, not really directly in FileWave, because like we said earlier, there's no direct hooks into FileWave, but more as a FileWave admin, the ways that you could use AI. And if you're curious, some of the images in this presentation, actually pretty much all the images in this presentation were done with AI. So you can make some fun stuff.
I'm going to, I think create my own AI interface just to attend this session of yours on AI interfaces. I might as well let it learn from you. So that's what it's for, right?
Yeah, there was I think a CNET or a Wall Street Journal person who used a voice and video AI to attend meetings instead of her. There was a cute video, trying to see if she could automate her work and not even have to show up to work meetings. So
evidently she didn't see the double-edged sword part of that problem.
yes, that is a little bit of a problem. So check it out. If you don't know much about AI, or if you haven't used anything at all, and if you're just kind of curious, join us and see. So then, the Foundry, right? So the Foundry is our self-paced video learning. If you've never gone to the Foundry, the QR code's here. It's just foundry.filewave.com. Last time we talked about the FileWave Certified Administrator course, so we're continuing to work on developing that and materials in general in the Foundry. But one goal that we had for ourselves that we set in December to complete by the end of the first quarter, we did. If you go to Foundry, you'll see that there's sort of an onboarding section. And that onboarding section is high-level videos to introduce you to how FileWave works. It's great if you're a new administrator and you really just are not quite sure how anything works. You can watch through those videos. We're incorporating them into a new onboarding for new customers where they would also look at those videos in addition to the one-on-one time to add some kind of prepackaged, self-paced, do it at your own pace kind of stuff. So you'll see that in the Foundry if you look there today. The knowledge base, which is another component that I take care of. Okay, so we moved from Confluence on-premise to Confluence Cloud last summer. We did that move because Atlassian, for anyone that uses Atlassian, that they are really pushing everyone to SaaS and off of on-prem. It's incredibly difficult to stay on-prem with Atlassian products. So we had to move. And at the time we were debating, trying to find like a good alternative to Atlassian. Is it the best thing to go to? Timing wise, we really didn't have there wasn't so much of a choice. It was really easy to do the migration. I'm sure you guys have seen everything really migrated over simply. So, there was that, but Atlassian has some things that we don't like that much. There's some issues that will arise that they're slow to solve. And so we've been just in general, since that migration, we've been looking for, is that the best? Maybe we stay there. I found another solution that actually we found two solutions that were potentially good. I think that I know what I want to do. But just know we're gonna keep cleaning up the knowledge base and organizing it. 2 years ago, we started with identifying old articles and archiving them and cleaning up. And when we did the cloud migration last year, we did a lot more cleanup. Everything's in a structure where it's categorized. So it should be quite a bit easier to find. And on the topic of AI, there is this link that you'll see in this image, this chatbot interface. This is kind of an MVP, minimum viable product for this, where you click there and you can ask it things. I think it is a good future way to interact with a knowledge base, where you're not trying to specifically search for an article. The search in Atlassian in particular is not so smart. So it's looking for specific words you're looking for. But in the chatbot interface, you could just say, how do I customize iOS wallpapers? You just give it your goal and it will give you the article and a link to the article. So check it out if you haven't. The other benefit is we are global, and a lot of people, for instance, we have customers in Japan where they might be more comfortable asking their question in Japanese, because in your day-to-day, when you live in a country that's not, English first, you might wonder, exactly how to phrase something. Perhaps it could be. So being able to do something in a native language, I think, is a plus, because it makes less friction. Because no matter what, like I've spent time in Israel where I had to try to speak, even though I spoke Hebrew my whole life growing up. Converting is difficult with language. So I think, give it a try. And if whatever language you speak, try it out in there and see if it gives you the right answer. Now, the answer will still be English. I've also been looking at solutions that will convert language of articles. Yeah, but that doesn't work out great with technical articles. There's a lot of words that a lot of AI is not good at converting. So that'll be sort of an ongoing thing, because in a perfect world, I would want every FileWave customer to be comfortable with the KBE, be able to ask something in whatever language and get the answer back in, that same language, ideally. So this is sort of our long-term thing. It'll take some time, but we'll get there. Okay. So then there's another thing that we've been talking about the past few Alliance meetings, which was FileWave Assist, and just showing it again in case anyone's forgotten about it. But it's a program that will every month we'll be connecting with you. In some cases, it's larger and it's more than just once a month, but this is meant to keep things on the rails. It's not support. Sometimes people think about that this is some form of support. Support is still support, and Derek's team is great at break fix. This is more, I'm going to be re-imaging all my machines this summer for the new school year. What would be the best plan to do that? What would be some new restrictions I could apply, and kind of the best practices and why. So this type of project is good for keeping things on the rails. It's also good for smaller organizations. If you don't know someone who uses FileWave, we group you with 2 other organizations. So you'll be together with peers that are ideally geographically local to you. They're at least in the same time zone. We try and shoot for a school being with a school, a business being with a business, to try and make it so that you might have some common ground about needs. So this can be good. And primarily we're doing this in North America. There's about, I think at this point, 90 customers that are involved in this program. Over in Europe, we have one customer that is essentially in this program. We don't call it this, but they're essentially in this because we started with them before this existed. So what I'd say is, if you're in Europe or Asia and you have interest in this, we have the staff globally to do this. And if you're curious about it, reach out to sales or reach out to customer experience. you know, or even me. And you can reach out to me on Discord too, and ask about it, because it is available. It's been working really well, primarily in North America. So it is a good offering.
Well, it's been working well everywhere. It's just mostly been in America.
It only exists in North America, and one customer in Europe, where it's fairly large, where it's actually about 5 hours a week of work with them. So that's why I say it's not. It is really FileWave Assist, but it's sort of like a very, very large version of FileWave Assist with this one customer. But it is a good program everywhere. We'd like to do it everywhere. So then I guess those were kind of the key things that are part of my world. And I don't know, did I miss any questions in the chat, Tony or Derek?
No, but
okay.
Missed Starlink going out completely for 5 minutes while I had to go turn it back on and see what.
I heard Starlink. You went out a little bit again, so Starlink's been unstable on this call. Okay. Well,
I totally for a few minutes.
Well, I guess if it's going to go out, now's the time for it to go out, because now's the AMA portion that folks like. And actually, so we asked for questions beforehand. We started doing that a few AMAs ago. And the number of questions between prior ones and this one, it grew a lot. There were 25 questions that came in. So we're going to try and work our way through these, and then we're going to try and have an open session to be able to ask more. But a lot came in, which is good, because we can kind of chat about it before, you know, to see that we know what the answer would be, you know, because it's always possible in an AMA you'll ask us something that we just didn't really think about. Okay, so I guess let's just start kind of walking through these. You know, best practices for a new person stepping into the role of FileWave admin. That is covered in a couple of ways. So there is a best practices session that's on YouTube that we also will be doing about every 6 months on Discord. I made that about every 6 months because the best practices don't really change, you know, until about 6 months or more has come by. You know, I may not have learned a new thing. I would say the YouTube recordings are great for somebody. The Foundry videos, you know, as far as like that onboarding videos, you know, that new admin, if they watch through those are meant to explain how things work, and the way that it explains them should hopefully lead you down the best practice path. We can also do direct training. Like I said, those packages that I said that we were going to offer, where we have different sizes of package, and we'll have explanations for why you would want the different sizes. For instance, a new admin that inherited FileWave and the previous person wasn't really doing anything with it, well, that could be pretty simple. That's just a matter of learning FileWave and the best practices in general. But maybe you came into an organization that heavily used FileWave, and there's a ton of file sets and a ton of associations. You know, that requires perhaps beyond the best practices, maybe some help from professional services in sorting out what the previous admin was doing. So we'll have those published shortly. In the next 30 days, we should have those all published. So I think that's the right answer for that. FileWave officially transitioning to Alma Linux. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Again, once FileWave 15 comes out, that is a requirement for us. Now in the next quarter, we can spend some more time getting there. You know, our drop dead deadline for having you have a way to do it is really by the end of the year, that every issue should be sorted out. Everything should be perfect, ideally in the next 3 months. But if by end of year, everything is 100% sorted out, then you would have about 6 months to be able to switch your server. And switching your server, the way it looks from the script that I've tested, is that it just in place turns that into an Alma Linux server, and everything's there, and It's really just a matter of having a good backup, because you should always have a good backup. And that's talked about in the best practices video. And then running the script, and then it's all done. So we hope for this to be not a headache at all for somebody. The optimal location for FileWave in terms of, DEP and MDM on premises versus the DMZ. I think that Tony and I, who actually did client management together at a prior company, even 20 years ago, we had our management solution exposed to the internet. I feel like it needs to be, now it can sit in a DMZ with the port, exposed. If you're hosted, you're technically sitting out on the internet with your server. The server should be always kept up to date, which goes back to best practices, because there will be security vulnerabilities that come out. So if you run it yourself on premise, think about how you update FileWave, because there are a lot of people with on-prem where I'll speak with them and they'll say that they're still running 14.6 even today. Think about that, and if you can get to 14.10, because there are vulnerabilities and you do want to patch. If you're hosted, we patch you, pretty aggressively. You'll always be on the latest. I think that the exposure to the internet is good for a management product, because especially post-COVID, but when Tony and I did this was decades before anything with, work from home. We just saw devices that were being sent home with people that couldn't be managed because they weren't connecting to VPN, or VPN was broken. But now there's really no border to your network. Clients move in and out. Schools, teachers will take them home. Students will take them home. Snow days here in Pennsylvania, they've eliminated snow days by saying it's a school from home day using a computer. That computer should be managed, and so having a management system the client can reach is important. So same thing for corporations, right? You have lots of work from home folks. So I would say exposed to the internet is the best. Unless Tony or Derek, if you had an opinion otherwise.
Sorry, I was distracted by chat.
Take my silence as a no.
Yeah. So, okay, and Paul brings up a good point. Internet facing is good, so you can wipe devices remotely. I mean, just think about if you have devices that do not come on, and you don't have an always-on VPN, or even if you do, that VPN could become disconnected because the network that they're on doesn't allow VPNs, so it's not able to connect. Well, now you're kind of disconnected from it. You'd hope that the ports that FileWave uses would be open for the client to reach. I mean, that can be a consideration, but your best position is exposing it to the internet. There was a set of questions that came in around managing OS system updates in timely manner with MDM, system updates such as Ventura, blocking them from going to the new version, forcing the refresh of updates requested in the update manager, and the whole plan for a mainstream packaging service. So we'll lump that all together. So system updates with MDM. So we know that there is an issue with the Apple framework for MDM updates. And there are KB articles that are in our KB that talk about those issues. One of the ways around it is nudge, for instance. I mean, nothing's perfect. No workaround is perfect. But if you look in our KB, you'll see that there's an article published about nudge in particular. And so I would probably take a look at that now, while Apple seems to have some things, I guess, that we're working out with Apple. We do have contact with Apple around this issue. We're trying to work it out and see if there's things we could do in products that would improve it. But nudge would be one possible solution. As far as suppressing updates such as Ventura, there is a KB article that is meant to kill the Ventura, or any, if you're on or in the past Ventura or Big Sur or Monterey, there is a KB article of a thing that will kill that updater if it goes to run. So there's that, but there's also the delay updates that's built into the MDM. Now, if you want to delay past sort of 90 days, I suppose, then the KB article that kills the installer would be probably the best way I could say. And then, obviously Ventura, you want to block it because you're not yet ready, because you don't have some software that works with it. And then later on, you'd want to back out, I suppose, that that blocker for the updater so that you could get to Ventura. And we do also have articles about being able to do upgrades and erase installs. So you should see that in the KB. Okay. Refreshing updates requested in the update manager. So I think we're talking about the assistant for finding updates. If we're talking about, I think we're talking about Windows in particular, but if you were the person that asked this, if you're in the chat, you could just sort of rephrase this, say if you're asking about Windows or Mac, but I'm assuming it's Windows. On the Windows side, there is a process that runs on the FileWave server every 24 hours that will refresh the offline catalog. As well, because we use the offline catalog, we've become aware that Microsoft is sometimes poor at publishing that catalog on day one. So Patch Tuesday will come. The offline catalog is not yet published. Your server probably hasn't run its daily update either yet. It usually, I see it appear on Thursday or Friday. So Microsoft will publish it on Thursday or Friday of that week. And then when your server runs that software update command on its side, then you should start to see, for instance, the May updates would appear.
Josh, in the chat there, Tom says that he was asking about Mac updates.
Oh, good. That's easier.
So for example, my MacBook is running Ventura, but if I look it up in the update manager, the most recent update request is for Big Sur. It probably depends a little bit about some of the transition here. We'll say has not gone smoothly from the older school method of doing software updates, where you could use our update command line tool to do so, and we kind of leveraged that within FileWave. Moved, I can't remember which version it was. Was it Monterey? Where they
Catalina?
moved to
Yeah,
well,
I forget.
One of them, they moved to MDM commands only to do the updates. And so we have another interface for that in that software update assistant. And that's where you'll want to look for those. But we've found that there have been a number of issues. Speaking bluntly, we need to fix something on our side to make it so that you can't see the major updates, because you can't go from, say, Monterey to Ventura directly through that kind of update, but we'll show that to you. But the answers that come back from that are coming from MDM.
Yeah. Okay, so then I guess I know I see some goings on in the chat on these topics as well. And so then the mainstream packaging service, I guess that goes into sort of the long-term plan, not about OS updates, but about, well, I guess there is a bit. There's the bit where you want to make software update process a little more streamlined, improvements around messaging and such. But then there's also the potential future integration of things like WinGet, right? More directly in the product. Right, Tony?
Sorry, I was answering a question in the chat.
That's what I thought. I realized as I said it, your eyes were looking at your keyboard. But the mainstream packaging service, that goes more into the future of potentially WinGet or auto package being more integrated into FileWave, right?
Yeah, we definitely want to see that be a little bit easier. But the software update piece is just as important to us. It was kind of a flip of a coin, which one we worked on first. We went with third party because we feel there's more of an an entry barricade, if you will, to getting to that, because you have to do a little bit of scripting. So we wanted to make that a little bit easier, but the software update stuff is just as important to us. And it's a critical in the application, of course, because you want to make sure that you're secured, that they're updated, that you know what's missing or not. So we have a whole bunch of things that we're looking at software update side. Accuracy is one of them, because as I said, the transition's just not been as smooth as we would have liked on our part or on Apple's part. Both, I'm sure we would both say the same thing there.
No. Okay, so then.
In fact, I will just share anecdotally that just yesterday, Josh and I were working on something for a demo later today, and I'm like, why in the world won't this device run these MDM commands? It's just sitting there. What the heck's going on? And we had to run the Kickstart thing because the local MDM client was dying. So these things impact us too, but hopefully that'll get resolved at some point here.
Yeah, and that was actually a rapid response update that my machine had. So that was those new ones. And Bjorn asks about Alma Linux 9.2 with a fresh install supported. So Bjorn, I don't have an answer on that. 9.1 was just what I had used the migration script from CentOS to Alma Linux on a few months ago. So I guess I'd say I'd expect that 9.2 would work, but I can't say for sure yet.
Well, and we haven't released a version of FileWave yet that is supported on it.
So the timing of that, when 15 releases, I should be able to get installers that would be Alma Linux compatible. And then I'm going to kind of run through everything that we have from the beta process. So it won't take long, but we should have more information in the coming couple of months. Okay. There is also, what is FileWave's recommendation for managing unattended operating system upgrades? So I guess I don't know if that was Mac OS or Windows, I'm assuming, because iPads, for instance, are straightforward. So in the case of Windows and Mac OS, I believe we have articles posted on both. Although the Windows one might talk about getting to Windows 10, I don't know that the wording talks about getting to Windows 11, but the idea should be the same, and we should probably look at refreshing that. So I guess check that out. For somebody asking these questions, if I don't give you an end-to-end answer here, only because there's so many questions, if you join Discord, we can follow up more, or if you were to shoot an email, we could talk about it more. Or I guess probably the easiest thing, because some of these might start to go into like support ticket kind of questions, you could open a support ticket because everyone knows how to open those. And if it turns out that support sees it as like a pro services thing, they'd kick it over to me. And that's not to say that it's a paid pro services thing, just it might be a question that I'd have to answer. Or they might ask me what the answer is. So maybe open a support ticket if we don't get to the complete answer on your question. So what is the best practice when replacing older iPads with new ones, ensuring the same apps and profiles and etc. are on the new devices? And that one is probably deeper than we could get to on this. I'm trying to think about if we have articles that cover it now. It would be a great Discord chat, again, to then make a video about. We know, for instance, there are schools in particular where they will collect all the iPads and hand them out fresh again in the new year, and they want to change the name and the assigned person for all of them. And that could seem like a complicated thing directly in FileWave, but there is a KB article about bulk updating the enrollment user and setting the device name for iPads. And it uses our API to do it, because you can do those changes in the web admin, but there's a simple little script that you can use with a spreadsheet, and you can basically rename all your devices. There's things like that custom iOS wallpaper that would let you have the serial number of the device show up on the lock screen. So when you have a stack of iPads to hand out, maybe the serial number in large text is helpful. Or because you can use custom fields in that, you could show who the assigned user is or the iPad's device name. So making it really easy to pick it up and hand it out. So there is that. And okay. And for anyone asking for articles between Emma and John and Sean and everybody, there should be links in there. But again, if you don't get the answer, if it's missed in something, then just ping us after. Okay, so yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff around this because probably the naming, the assignment of the iPads, and wiping them out, and then the whole thing of using the device enrollment program, Apple School Manager, Apple Business Manager, so that the device comes in and having a depth profile that's configured to only show the questions you want to show. There's a lot to it. So it could be like a whole session just on that. Hopefully we have enough supporting articles.
It's kind of an it depends thing, right? There's not really a clear and easy answer on this one. It kind of depends on what you want to do. But I will say that's exactly the kind of thing that that folks work through in that assist program, right? Is to go through and try to figure that out. And it's also a great thing to do in Discord, right? If you want a free option, because the thing that we love seeing about Discord, and frankly, the thing that never with Alliance in
oh, you broke up again, or you're breaking up.
That we're seeing a lot more between customers where folks are talking to each other in any way.
Oh, I think bits of it came through as it was catching up, that the Discord's seen more traction than the Alliance forum. So helping people customer to customer, which I think is really the best, because like you guys, when you come to professional services or even support, right, you're going to support because something's broken, and support knows they've experienced a lot of things broken because people always come to them. People come to professional services asking how to do things. We know how to do them mostly because we've worked with other people to do them, and we do some research, constantly on the best ways to do things. But I'm only as good as I am because I'm exposed to so many different situations at different customers. For any of you, you can then get exposed to more customers in Discord and the Alliance forums, and in a more real-time, chat way. And hopefully if you go to conferences, and maybe you meet each other in person and, form even better, relationships to be able to discuss things. And I should mention quickly, next week, Sean Holden and I will be at MacAD UK in the UK. So we will be there, and Sean will be a speaker at MacAduck if anyone is in the UK or will be going there for that conference. And in July, Jonathan Kane will be a speaker at Mac Admins here in Pennsylvania, and I'll be going there as well because I can drive over there, and I will be helping John with that. And we should be doing HEC in November as well, where Pro Services is there and some of the sales folks, and again, doing a talk there. So we hope to meet you guys. Okay, so to get through these before we hit the end, which is getting near, will there be other SSO integrations other than Azure, Okta, and Google? So the way we've done SSO, it is with those specific things. It wasn't more of a generic SAML kind of integration. And I'd say there's not one on the roadmap or a more generic SAML necessarily in the short-term roadmap. But this is where the product board, the link was shared earlier in the chat. If you go to the knowledge base and you look for product management, you'll see the article with product board. Submit it there, because it's either that we should think about a generic SAML thing that could work with many things, which we might figure out if 10 different customers give us 10 different things to integrate with, or maybe there's just one more that's common that we've missed. So submit it there in product board so that we can get a better picture of what's needed.
And I can give a little bit of a picture on the uptake that we've had on these. So roughly, we have in the ballpark about 100 customers or so that are using an IDP currently, and of those, it's about 2 to 1 of Azure being the predominant. So it's about 2 Azure for every Google or Okta IDP. It's the rough breakout. So what we'd be looking for would be, what's the thing that we need to add that's going to also satisfy a lot of folks, right? What's the next Azure or what we need to do on that front? So it really is about how many folks need it.
Yeah, and kind of related to that, there was this question about Azure AD. And I wasn't quite sure. And if you happen to be on right now and you ask this Azure AD question, maybe specify, because you can tie it in for SSO, for instance, as the previous point explains, but I wasn't sure what you meant by it. So if you ask in the chat and I see the reply, I'll answer it, or if somebody gets to reply in the chat, that'd be great. Is there a plan to incorporate the management of virtual reality devices? I was super, and Tony also was very about this as well. If this was things like the Meta Quest, or if this was the Apple device that nobody knows if it exists yet, but we think at WWDC they might announce it, or if it was some other vendor's device, and also what the use case was. And if you happen to be in here, well, in the chat, if you'd say, and product board again would be really great if people have different vendors of different VR devices or augmented reality devices. If you have a reason that you want to manage them, that would be super for us to understand. I could think of, if there is an Apple product, which everyone seems to believe there is, if they incorporate the MDM framework, then maybe it just fits in like Apple TVs do, for instance, and maybe there's location tracking. But if it is about the Apple device, since it doesn't exist until WWDC potentially, it's hard to say on that one. But I see Jeffrey says MetaQuest for him. So we didn't have any VR or augmented reality stuff in the roadmap, but if you go through product board or Tony's email, I shared it earlier, maybe share like what you'd like to accomplish. And then we can balance it all out. Okay. Let's see. When will we be able to customize the dashboard settings in FileWave Central versus FileWave, really? So the dashboard is different in Central versus Anywhere. And then Tony, I didn't know if you wanted to speak to this because it's more.
Well, I kind of enjoy having you just cover everything and then I really say anything at all. But no, the dashboarding feature is a great tool. We in the chat earlier, we don't make nearly enough use of it. We're going to be making a lot more use of it, but we didn't archive the dashboard in Central because it was really useful for alert to make sure that 100% of everything was all. Before we eventually get rid of that, we won't be in dashboard that's in Central. We may incorporate the Grafana dashboard, so we won't be updating what's in Central, but Grafana's are actively updating and working on. We're especially working right now on some additional ways to look at system health, especially for the very, very large environments where things are very IP syncs and Google syncs and IDP syncs and etc. Where we're looking at more of how the systems are in Grafana, but then we really want to expose some more for reporting and alert as well. So that's the place that we'll invest time and energy. At some point, killing out the dashboard as it is currently in Central, but incorporating the an iframe or something of the Grafana dashboard.
Yeah, and I'd say on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, we do have that getting started with Grafana, which is meant to show you how to make your own dashboards, but you might want to watch it just to see what Grafana is if you haven't taken a look. That's published. And there will be another Getting Started with Grafana coming up on Discord. So the next question is easy, which I like. File set deployments, excluding Macs from file set deployments. So particularly, right, deployments can be edited in FileWave 15 in Central, and deployments can handle excluding a device or a group of devices. So you will have what you need in the next, well, if you're on-prem, whenever you upgrade your server after 15 releases, which should be in a couple of weeks. And if you're hosted, you know, again, in a couple of weeks when you get upgraded by operations. So you should have that ability. And actually, let me just make sure, when can we add exceptions group on making updates in the? Yes, I believe that I covered everything in that. So the last page of questions is intermittent issues with renaming an iOS Apple TV client. So I looked at this and I understand why it happens. So when you rename something and it's an MDM enrolled device in the Apple world, there is a command that goes to Apple, that goes to the device, that tells it to rename itself. And inventory then tells us that all occurred. So when we're seeing that a device name is not changing, there's either a problem on Apple's side, or conceivably there's a bug, right, on our side, that when you go to do that command, we're not sending something right. This one, I would say, for anybody that's experiencing this, reach out to support and kind of dig into this with support, because we should identify if there's something we could be doing better. You know, even if it was an Apple caused thing, maybe there's something we could do, like making the timeout longer for trying to do the rename. But that would be probably your best bet on this one, because it's more of a break fix kind of question.
Yeah, Josh, let me chime in with something there too. Yeah. One of the things that I didn't mention that we're working on in this next release, I didn't have it in the list, but one of the things that's kind of somewhat internal, but somewhat very useful in a production environment too, is, you know how you can look at a device and look at the MDM history, the command history on an individual device, right? That data is not exposed to inventory, which means that you can't look at that for your whole environment, where you could you know, be able to look at status overall. So we're looking to expose that data in an inventory query, so you can actually do some reporting on that. So you might be able to do a report that says, look for all the, I think that one comes through as a settings command. Look for all the settings commands that are in a not sent state, or in a sent state but not acknowledged, those types of things.
Oh yeah, because for instance, in researching the client's not, you know, where the system channel's in a stuck state maybe, or something like that, then it was hard to make an easy report to show where things are at. And yeah, so that would be good. Okay, so the viewing what's installed on the computer without looking through a query. There's an option in FileWave Anywhere. There is a tab for it. And I believe, Tony, when we talked yesterday, that there isn't a specific version that will get that in Central, but it would probably be a good idea for that to happen for consistency. Right? Unless your Starlink cut out, I think. We'll take that as yes. Okay. Yeah, we'll take that as yes. But so if you go into Anywhere and you look at a device, you will see it there. I think Tony's back. So let's see. Can we get actual model names? Oh, Tony and I chatted about this yesterday as well. So the pretty name, a lot of organizations, a lot of systems or reporting, they'll, you know, the sort of the standard name where it's like IPAR-1, for instance, and they'll pass it through a translation table. For anyone that uses Incident IQ as a ticket system, you know, they have that like model reference where you can say, all these models equal this, and then you can kind of name it the way you want. That kind of thing we do not have in product, but it seems like, again, something good to ask through product board, because from a technical standpoint, it's not very technically difficult in theory to have a translation table, but that does not exist right now. So you see the 4,1. Let's see. How can I create a report showing counts of each model of each device? Now, if you want to see counts in FileWave Central, whenever you make a query, so that's like a report down at the bottom. If you have it as a favorited query, with the little checkbox next to it, so it appears on the left pane, it does show the count for how many are in there. I mean, that's one easy way. So if you have certain things that you like to always know the number of, then those queries, just make them a favorite. And in FileWave Central, you'll see the number on the left-hand side. That would jump out to me as probably the easiest way. And then also when you're looking at a query, I believe in the top right corner, it shows you the number of devices that are in that query, even just looking at it. My memory is that it shows that.
If I could chime in on that one, Josh, hopefully I'm coming through a little better now. I just want to mention to be a little bit careful with the favoriting of queries, because I do see in a lot of environments where people do that with all of them. And that is a little bit of a challenge, because those queries are running all the time then when you do that to get those numbers. One thing that I think is really good to do is anything where you're looking to do aggregate reporting like that, that's where Grafana is perfect for aggregate reporting. So if you create a report for the thing, you can then use Grafana to actually show you like a pie chart that's a breakout of all of those devices. So I think Grafana is a great way to go for that particular one as well.
Yeah. And actually in Emma's Getting Started with Grafana, we talk about reporting and how to show things from queries. And you're right. So you could have something in Grafana that's a little widget that shows counts of certain things that you always want to monitor. So one kind of interesting thing that a company that we work with is doing, or company, a large school district, they re-image a lot of devices. I think 40,000 devices get re-imaged each summer. And they have these little progress gauges for each one of the schools. And so they can track on the screen how it's going with imaging across the whole environment. It'll go from 0 to 100%, I believe, for the progress bar. So they do that by using a field that indicates that it has the 2023 summer image. So from inventory, they're counting that versus the devices that don't have that field set to the 2023 image. So it can be super easy. And I know we're running up against the end of this. So I included a message in the chat about the link for Discord and the forums, because that'd be a great way to continue once we wrap up. But I'll get through this page at least. How can we prevent teachers from turning on Find My Mac? So Find My Mac creates a problem that I believe you can overcome in the DEP profile for your devices. The DEP profile, on the last tab, you will see a thing about whether you're going to allow, and I always forget the name of it when I try and do it from memory, but you're going to either escrow the recovery information to Apple School Manager, Apple Business Manager, or allow them to be able to escrow it themselves, or disable. And if you disable, then they won't be able to lock, active and lock, that's it, I always forget. But they won't be able to do that activation lock, which I believe should then prevent them preventing you from wiping the device. So I believe that's the answer. And will FileWave continue to maintain, and also there is a restriction profile, I believe, as well. So will FileWave continue to maintain the IVS in the future? And I think probably that question came from the fact that imaging wasn't really in FileWave Central. So it might appear that we didn't care about it, but you'll see in FileWave 15 that associating images is in FileWave Central. It was just a matter of it wasn't accomplished yet.
Anywhere.
Oh yeah.
In Anywhere.
Anywhere.
But yes, we're continuing.
Anywhere, not Central. Yes. Yes, because it's of course always been in Central. Um, so in FileWave Anywhere, it is there, and it is supported obviously for Windows imaging, because Mac OS imaging hasn't been done for quite a few years. So Windows imaging with the IVS has a future. Okay, and that is, I know, to be the last slide of questions. And we did run up, we actually ran past the time. So I know we covered a lot of stuff. I would love to keep chatting. I feel like we probably have to wrap this up. But I do want to continue chatting on Discord or the Alliance forums, wherever you would like to. And these three barcodes can help you get there. If you scan it with your phone or whatever, you can get the URL. And I pasted them in the chat a few times. So I'll leave this on screen if somebody needs.
This is like the weekend when you have to move the party from the bar to somebody's house, right? So yes. This is a good time to move the party over to Discord from here. But hey, on behalf of myself, Josh, Derek, everybody that is here from the FileWave team, we're so thankful that you were able to join us. We look forward to doing these events every time. They tend to be a little stressful right up till the minute they start, but we love doing them. We love getting a chance to talk to you all. We really appreciate your feedback, and thank.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
So I'll leave this up on screen, and I'll just mute myself, but I'll leave this on screen in case anybody needs it for a minute or two until Nina ends our session today.
Thanks, everybody.